This week on Instant Experts, tariff madness spreads to instant experts.
You started it.
I did not.
You did too.
Texas declares war on sensual pleasure.
Yep.
And Trump strikes back with a shock ruling for the ladies.
He actually did something good for once.
Tom Selleck is very, very proud, my friend.
And we mentioned him for a reason. We'll come back to that.
Welcome to Instant Experts, everybody. It's all the latest news explained by idiots, here to keep you sane in a crazy world. I'm Henry Lee, and as always, I'm here with my dear friend, The Honk. Honky, welcome.
Henry, a pleasure. Great to be here. We say it every week, but what a week. I mean, just when you think it's going to slow down, it just doesn't. And this is a show, we always say about crooks, fuckwits and morons. But you've got to say this week, the action has been...
Non-stop.
I haven't seen action like this I haven't seen excitement like this since Usha Vance met Eric the Viking in Greenland the first time.
Yes, there's new insanity every week, although strangely this week's insanity bears a striking resemblance to last week's insanity.
Except that this time it's personal.
Well, I'm surprised you brought that up, Honko. Who's going to tell the story?
You can. I'm not even meant to be talking to you. I forgot. I'm not really minded to do any favours either, so you can do it.
Fine, have it your way.
Fine.
All right, here goes. So it all began a couple of months ago when I started buying my lunch from Honk's Side Hustle, which is a sandwich shop.
For the fucking thousandth time, it is a bagel shop. It is called the Kosher Hole.
And I assume it has a lot of outlets in parks and railway stations.
We are diversifying. Stop being so dirty.
Anyway, I buy lunch there every day.
You do, even though you live in Melbourne and the shop's in Sydney.
Indeed. Well, anyway, let's not get hung up on the facts, Honk.
Yeah.
The point is I buy my lunch there every day.
Well, you would if this story was actually true.
That's true. But I spend about $100 a week.
You do, it's
in
true.
my imagination. And all I get in return is the bagels and coffee I order.
Yeah, which in fact you keep ordering and you keep paying for. So what's the problem?
Well, I didn't think that was fair. So I imposed a tariff on your bagels of 10%.
Yeah, then tell them what happened.
Well, then I was paying $110 a week, and still all I got for it were the bagels and coffee I ordered.
Yeah, the same bagels and coffee you were already ordering, and so you escalated.
That's right. I had no choice. I went to 20%.
And so I retaliated. I was like, fuck you. If you're going to I put it up to 50%.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to cop that. So I went to 100%.
Yeah, so now you're paying $200 a week when you used to pay $100 for the same coffee and bagels. Is that right?
That's right. But it's not about the money, Honk. It's the principle. The trade is unfair because I keep giving you money by choice in exchange for coffee and bagels.
But that's only because you couldn't be fucked making them yourself and you haven't wanted to make them yourself for years.
Yeah, but I could if I wanted to.
Yes, but you don't. You chose to buy them from me because you're a lazy old goat.
Well, I think you should be put out of business for selling me cheap and delicious coffee and bagels. That's why the tariffs are 100%.
Okay, well, that clearly makes no sense. Basically, you're now paying $200 for things that used to cost you $100 for no reason, but, you do you.
It's the principle, Honko, and I'm going to win this trade war.
You've actually already won it.
What do you mean?
Well, haven't you heard I'm actually closing the shop next week?
Oh.
That's what you wanted, isn't it?
It is. Make Henry's lunches great again.
No, I'm shutting the shop because I'm taking my wife and kids to Hawaii for Easter with the double money I'm now making.
And I'm going to shoot my other foot because the first one hurt so good.
Yeah.
Well, that was a bit of fun, folks, but... it illustrates, I think, what's happening in tariffs, but we'll get to that very shortly. We'll start, as we always do, with some shout-outs to instant experts around the world.
Yes, indeed.
And there's a growing list of not just instant experts, Honko, but addicts out there.
Instant addicts.
Harassing us early on Saturday mornings, demanding their fix.
Well, you remember, when we were kids, you'd go to the train station, there'd be some guy who would look at you, and then a minute later he'd look at you again, he'd forgotten he'd already asked you, and he'd say, oh, mate, my wife just had a baby. Oh, can I have money to get to the train station, mate? I got to get to the hospital. That's what it's kind of like.
Yeah, you're not talking about David from Bondi that way, are you?
Or do you mean Bondi, like a Pam Bondi?
Either way, but you're comparing one of our listeners to an addict at a train station.
Well, he's a little bit like that, David. He hit us up the other morning. He's like, where's the episode, mate? I've got to get to the hospital with him.
Had to come in on Sunday and do another episode.
Yeah, we did.
We've got listeners from all over Australia, in particular Marie in Copacabana, very notable for being the home of Albo's Beach House, $4 million worth of pleasure.
$4 million. And Marie says that for that reason she thinks she's got it rough, but she's got no idea how good she's got it.
Right.
Because that's where Albo bought the $4 million holiday house in Copa because that's where his fiancée Jodie is from.
Right.
So it could have gone much worse for Marie.
She dodged a bullet,
She dodged a bullet. She could have had to take one for the team from Albo.
Yeah, well, now she's got 24 years living next door to Albo. Yeah. Albo. Who the fuck is Albo? A question many of us are asking.
Yes.
Anyway, listeners in the UK, Littlehampton on the south coast in the West Sussex, then up north
Yes.
in Kendal in Cumbria.
Hello.
Leeds in Yorkshire. In the west, Cardiff in Wales.
Yes, wettest place I've ever been in my life.
Is it?
Yes.
Lots of listeners all over the world. I'm pleased to report that Ouagadougou is back.
You mean I did my Inner West Karen voice? I think you'll find it's Ouagadougou. I think you'll find it's pronounced Ouagadougou.
I'm joking my privilege, Honky.
Yes.
Joking my privilege.
Good, I'm glad to hear that.
We've got Kroonstad in the Orange Free State.
That's in South Africa, right?
We've got Oklahoma City and Belgrade in Florida in the
Yes.
US. Cabo San Lucas in Mexico.
Hello.
Noted party town.
Yes.
Taipei in Taiwan.
Well, it's currently Taiwan, but the week's not over yet.
Watch this space.
Yeah.
8 different locations in Holland. Honky.
Wow, what is going on in Holland? The party's in Holland.
Stuttgart in Germany, home
Yes.
of Porsche and Mercedes-Benz.
Yes.
Not that I would know because I drive a 20-year-old car that cost 20
Yeah.
grand in
But with tariffs, you
2007.
could drive a great new car.
Yeah, for twice the price.
Yeah.
And lots of regulars that we've shouted out in previous episodes. And so thanks all for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, Honky, we don't want to talk about tariffs all day, but we do have to touch on the madness of the week.
I think, and we'd like to say this is the last time, but this is what they like to call in America a developing story.
Indeed. So, quick recap. This,
Yes, please.
It's hard to remember now, but this all started in early February with a would-be fentanyl emergency. Do you remember that, Honky?
But yes, I remember now that you say it. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so Trump started his little tariff escapade by declaring that too much fentanyl was coming in from Mexico and Canada.
Yeah.
And that constituted a national emergency.
Yeah, even though, of course.
More fentanyl goes into Canada from the US and the other way around.
But
Anyway.
apart from that, yeah.
But that allowed him to exercise presidential powers to regulate commerce during a national emergency under an International Emergency Economic Powers
And then
Act.
he did what?
So it basically meant he could ignore Congress and get on with fucking up the world.
Which he duly did.
Which he's done very successfully. So there's a bit of byplay with Canada and Mexico with 25% tariffs. And
which were on, they were off, they were on, they were off.
Correct, bit of tit for tat. But that was the appetizer for the main event, which is now happening, and that is the war on the world, and especially China, as Trump would say. And now the US and China are fighting like two drunks in a car.
Sure are.
Basically escalating bidding war for
stupid
tariffs,
numbers
a
of
bit
tariffs.
like the bagel shop.
Yeah.
And the state of play is Trump has now imposed 125% tariffs on goods coming out of China, and China has imposed 84% tariffs on goods coming out of the US.
But he says that he's done everybody else a favour because for the next 90 days he's paused the tariffs, he says, at only 10. They're only going to be 10%, right?
Only going to be 10%.
Except.
Right, up from 0 in many cases and an average of 2%.
So he's cut them up to 10%.
Exactly. He's improved them worse.
Yeah. But this was worth mentioning here. You probably saw this, but there was a Democratic senator grilling one of Trump's key tariff trade negotiator over why Australia got hit with a tariff at all, since Australia's one of the few countries that America's actually mostly has a trade surplus with.
That's right.
And his answer was, we need to run up the score to cure the deficit left by Biden.
So it's our job to pay for their trade deficit with other countries.
Yeah, but does he mean the trade deficit or the budget deficit?
It could be either, because
but either way, the deficit that was left by Biden was a massive cut by Biden from where it had been under Trump.
That's right, the budget deficit. They always forget that the president before Biden was Trump.
Yeah.
He blames Biden for everything.
This is like me saying, I'm still trying to wipe up the blood in the kitchen that the last tenant left, to which someone says, yes, from when you came over and shot the fucking guy.
Yeah, and then stabbed him 20 times.
Yeah.
So it's chaos. It's like a brawl in a Western saloon, and the rest of the world is basically the piano player trying not to get shot or have a bottle broken over their head. Anyway,
but now Trump has paused for 90 days. So tell us why he's paused.
Yeah, so, basically, a couple of obvious reasons. One is the stock market melted down.
Yeah.
He wanted Powell at the Fed to cut rates, which Powell refused to do because tariffs obviously drive prices up. It's inflationary.
Yeah.
Rate cuts are also inflationary, so he's not going to do it.
Yeah.
The bond market also melted down.
Yes.
In other words, so Japan and China very quickly dumped their US bonds. They hold a heap of US treasuries.
Yeah.
When you dump bonds, the interest rate you need to pay if you're borrowing goes up.
The yield.
Exactly. The yield that they sell for in the secondary market is the same as the interest rate the government needs to borrow at in the primary market. And so the US was facing it borrowing at 5%, not 4%. So basically 25% increase in interest costs.
Does not sound good.
No. So the bond market melted down. And, of course, the key factor Trump listened to the double episode on.
It's the only explanation
Experts.
on Instant Experts, and he finally understood the error of his ways.
He did. No, but seriously, I mean, it probably was the bond market that prompted the immediate reversal. But what's actually happening is wild.
Yeah.
And it's a tale of two advisors in the White House. And the guy who had the power initially is a guy called Peter Navarro.
Yeah, he's a prize fucking idiot.
And he's lost power to a guy called Scott Bessent. Bessent.
But fortunately, their views are so closely aligned that it's not really a problem. Just tell everyone what the two different views are.
So Peter Navarro's view of the world is that the world should be tariffed and that money should be used to balance the federal budget.
Yeah.
Scott Bessent's view is the world should be free trade.
Yeah.
Tariffs are simply a means to negotiate tariffs away.
Well, those two positions aren't that far apart, are they?
Only exactly the opposite. So we've gone from tariffs being a way of raising revenue, taxing Americans, by the way, to a way of driving free trade. So go figure that.
Yeah, superb. But Navarro is what a quality individual he is.
And that's the wild story. It's like Navarro's given very bad advice, but that's no surprise.
Yeah.
So he was literally became a White House economic advisor because Jared Kushner, who's Trump's son-in-law, who got his job as a White House advisor in Trump's first term by a very rigorous meritocratic process.
You mean sleeping with the boss's daughter, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he was put on the hook to find an economic advisor real fast to tell Trump what to do. So he looked up books on Amazon, found a book called Death to China.
Death by China?
Death by China.
May as well be called Death to China.
Same difference.
Yeah.
Thought it was cool and called the author and gave him a job.
Never met him before.
And that was Peter Navarro.
Yeah.
Now, Navarro has a PhD in economics from Harvard, so you would think he's not an idiot.
Except.
You would be wrong.
Yeah, you'd be wrong. Except.
Because in his books.
His rigorously academic books.
Yeah. He contradicts 250 years of economic theory going back to Adam Smith.
But he quotes a great genius.
And instead of Adam Smith, he quotes a guy called Ron Vara.
Yeah. And if that sounds slightly similar to Peter Navarro...
It's because Ron Vara is an anagram of Navarro.
This is not a joke, by the way. We do make shit up on the show. This is not made up.
He made up an economic expert who was his alter ego. And that expert, quote unquote, instant or otherwise, recommended tariffing just the world.
And by the way, you've got to assume that he did that because he couldn't find any actual authority to agree with him.
Correct. Yeah,
and just tell us how well it's gone for the US. Well, how well has it gone?
Well, it's destroyed $11 trillion in stock market capitalization. It's crashed the market.
Yes.
And it's just about sending the US into recession and the world into if not a Great Depression, it's certainly going to slow economic growth and created massive loss of trust and wild uncertainty.
It's not good.
So it's about a bit like two guys fighting in a bagel shop.
Yeah, a little bit. Fictional bagel shop. It's exactly like two guys fighting in a fictional bagel shop.
And so much so, I mean, Musk is not a friend of ours particularly, but he got one right this week when he called Navarro, quote unquote, a moron.
Yeah. Also, what does he call him? He calls him
Peter Retardo.
Yeah. So, although in fairness, Musk is having a tantrum because he's now been effectively ousted, having wasted $300 million on Trump and having blown himself away with that failed Wisconsin judicial bid.
Yes.
He's now sort of screwed himself.
He's had a bit of a mixed week.
He's had a bad week. Yeah.
He had some good things. He got a $6 billion contract from the US government for SpaceX, his rocket company.
Yeah, funny. It wasn't affected by those Doge cuts.
No, it escaped the Doge cuts.
Amazing.
Yeah. But he then decided to play video games to test out Starlink on his private jet, and that this is true. And then he therefore came into contact with a bunch of adolescent gamers.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Wasted absolutely no time.
The comments.
The shit out of him. So comments included, Honky, you have no real friends and will die alone.
What was the other one?
You ruined the country, just like you ruined all your marriages.
Yeah, but that wasn't even the best one.
And then another gamer posted repeatedly, I am your lost son. Look at me, Father Elon.
And he eventually just quit, didn't Elon? He had a tantrum and left.
He got killed and quit. He said, ironically, I've dropped out, given he was testing Starlink.
He sure has, in all possible ways. But Navarro,
probably
by the way,
wasn't his best outro.
Probably. But Navarro... That's the other interesting thing about Navarro. Hasn't Navarro also gone to jail?
Navarro went to jail. He went to jail on behalf of Trump, basically, which is another reason he got the job.
Of course. Qualified the usual way, which is for Trump by being in prison.
A is loyal and B has been to jail, exactly.
For Trump.
Correct. And he sentenced to 4 months jail for contempt of Congress.
Yeah.
Because he refused to testify before Congress in relation to the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
So he's got a criminal record.
Yeah, so the Republican Congress has somehow let a guy into the administration in a senior economic role who's literally been convicted of contempt of Congress.
Yeah, but it's still, if you
figure.
If you've run the scores, though, how does that compare with other people in the White House who might also have a...
I guess it's only misdemeanor contempt of Congress, and Trump has 34 felonies. So.
Yeah.
He's got plenty of room to move.
Yeah. It makes as much... Taking economic advice from a guy who cites himself under a fake name makes as much sense as listening to two guys with assumed names doing a podcast. It makes that much sense.
And taking economic advice from them, exactly. Yeah. But there have been some fun features of the tariff debacle.
Oh, so the guy we talked about, the chief trade negotiator, this poor bastard who was having his butthole reamed by Senator Mark Warner, was frantically still defending the tariff policy because no one had told him that Trump had already paused the tariffs.
The tariffs are definitely a good idea and definitely here to stay, and these are not a negotiating position. These are the future of American economics going to pay for everything.
Footnote, we've paused them.
They were paused mid-defense.
Yeah.
He was pleased to learn.
And then you've got the Shonko trade deal, share deal.
You've got the insider trading, yes. So there's been a lot of that in the Republicans this week. Tommy Tuberville, a senator from...
somewhere in the South.
Yeah, somewhere in the South. Sold when the market, just before the market tanked.
Mm-hmm.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, another MAGA lunatic, bought just before the tariffs were paused.
And that cannot be because she's a financial genius.
I wouldn't have thought so.
No. And the real reason is Trump put this thing up on his Truth Social.
Trump sent one of the great insider trading tweets of all time, literally said it was a good time to buy, and then an hour later paused the tariffs.
It's funny that. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And the other so Navarro's out. He's the tariff guy's out. Besant's come in, and he's as we said, his view is tariffs are a negotiating lever to actually get to no tariffs, to get to free trade.
Yeah. Why did you just do that in the first place?
Why don't you just ask nicely?
Yeah.
So he claims 75 nations have now come to negotiate deals with the US. Bear in mind, tariffs averaged 2% before. So
but the deals so far have been majestic, haven't they?
And the White House won't say who the 75 countries are, but they have come out in dribs and drabs.
Yeah, and they've come out swinging with some of the big guns, right? Tell them about the big guns.
Zimbabwe
has
cut tariffs on American goods to zero.
And it's done one now. And by the way, it's been an incredible success for Zimbabwe's economy because now inflation there is only 6 billion% every 40 minutes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Vietnam has cut to zero, although Navarro was complaining that wasn't enough. Which,
what are they meant to do?
I don't know. They've been bombed.
Are they meant to say they lost the war? What are they meant to do?
Correct. And countries are getting the memo as well. So Apple...
companies are getting the memo.
Yeah, companies are getting the memo. Apple magnificently saw the huge tariffs on China and said, we need to move our manufacturing base.
And obviously Trump is expecting they're going to move it to the United States. And have they moved it to the United States?
They've moved it to India.
Right. It's almost like people could have seen that they don't want to change their policy of manufacturing in places where it's cheaper to do it. They just don't want to get hit by massive tariffs.
Yeah, correct. And no doubt Americans will still keep buying cheap iPhones accordingly.
Unless they want to make them themselves, in which case they're going to make 7 every 5 years. They're each going to cost $400 million, right?
Correct. So they've claimed there's a conga line of nations lined up to do deals, but we're not convinced they'll go.
The immigration thing's also not going that well. They've only had one win, a very unusual win this week.
Right.
Have you been following the parrot story?
I have not.
So there's a nice little old lady, American lady, who was going on holidays to Puerto Rico, and here the story starts to get weird straight away. She was taking with her emotional support parrot.
Honky, are you making this up?
I'm not making this up. We did make some shit up on this. This is true. I don't know why. She was flying Frontier Airlines. She's getting back on the plane from Puerto Rico to go back to America, and they say, we're so sorry. We've made a terrible mistake.
Right.
You can't bring the parrot. And she goes, because I can't bring an emotional support bird? And they went, no, you can, but a parrot is not an approved emotional support bird. So she says, what am I meant to do? And they go, you're going to have to leave the parrot. She goes, well, I can't leave the parrot. What's going to happen to the parrot? And they said, well, then you're going to have to miss the flight. So she missed the flight, and this poor little old lady is now stuck in Puerto Rico with the parrot.
Right. This is a true story.
It's true story. They won't let the parrot back in America.
Right. Was the parrot Venezuelan?
Or like, what else could it be?
A hairdresser.
Or a hairdresser, yeah. No. I think the thing was the parrot. It's an intriguing question. The parrot, I think, had this sort of a plumage of feathers that were mistaken for membership of Tren de Aragua, the gang.
Right.
So I think they've now been both.
It's a gang parrot.
Gang parrot. They've now been
the
both.
Notorious Venezuelan gang parrot.
Well, everyone notorious. And it's now been, the little old lady and the parrot have now both been sent to prison. They've both been sent to prison in El Salvador. So the parrot's now doing time.
The streets aren't safe. Now the skies.
Yeah, the parrot's doing time in an all-male mega jail cell.
Is it a parrot prison? Or
No, it's a human prison. The parrot's now doing time in an all-male mega cell. And this could be the first new inmate in that prison for years that no one wants a blowjob from.
Well, it does have a beak.
Yeah.
And they're probably worried it might talk.
Yeah. Raphael. Oh, Raphael. Oh, I've seen your parrot.
I think we might have reached a new low. Not easy on this show, but I think we've done it.
We've done parrot impersonation.
All right, there are a million other things we could talk about, Honko. The other highlight for me...
Oh, it's got to be this, please.
And it is in our sort of sweet spot of silly and a little bit naughty. In Texas, there's a senator named Angela Paxton, whose husband is Ken Paxton, also the Attorney General of Texas, so a bit of a family affair there. And she sounds like a lot of fun, old Ange.
Yeah.
She wants people to provide photo ID and is introducing a law accordingly to require people to provide photo ID in Texas before they buy sex toys.
What?
Now, she claims it's for the protection of minors by regulating the sale of quote-unquote obscene devices to under 18s.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, right?
Right.
Doesn't everyone know that the number one killer of US teens and kids is sex toys?
It's pleasure.
It's not pleasure and sex toys. It's not being shot in the class, drugs,
suicide, road accidents.
No, it's sex toys.
So according to the I can barely say this with a straight face. According to the Texas Penal Code...
It's not actually called that, is it?
It is called the Penal Code.
Well, it is now.
An obscene device is qualified if it's, quote-unquote, a device including a dildo or artificial vagina designed or marketed as useful primarily for the stimulation of human genital organs.
Yeah, that seems reasonable definition.
There's one called the BJ Vance. It's a hot seller. And so she's trying to make people show ID to buy them. And by the way, this is not the first time they've had a go at this in Texas. No, they tried to ban sex toys in 1973.
Right.
Then in 2003, there was some pushback.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Mostly enough.
In 2003, the compromise was they were going to limit the possession of sex toys to 6 devices.
In one go or just in one household?
Sequentially at the same time.
Yeah, what's the rules?
In parallel, I don't know.
This, by the way...
How they came up with that.
This is why Debbie had to do Dallas, because there were no sex toys.
This is all true. This is all true. And finally, in 2004, a U.S. district judge ruled the law against sex toys in Texas unconstitutional.
Was this because they arrested this
lady?
And
unenforceable.
What happened? They arrested this lady?
She was having one of those sort of sex toy sort of Tupperware type parties.
Yeah, only with like a double-ended barbed wire.
They were fashionable for a while.
Double-ended barbed wire Swedish Suckmaster.
Anyway, she successfully fought for freedom.
Yeah.
But old Ange Paxton is trying to limit Texans' access to fun devices yet again.
Yeah.
And that's in circumstances where 34% of Texans own a sex toy.
Yeah.
Of whom 77.6 in a survey conducted by an organisation called WeVibe.
Fair enough,
said they masturbated to relieve stress.
The WeVibe does or the people do? 77.6?
I don't know. I think 77.6% masturbate and the other 22.4% lie.
Yeah.
But...
and some people didn't respond. That's of those who responded to the survey, because some were too busy jerking off with the double-ended Swedish Suckmaster to...
So what a story! And
the comments
when we saw this story online, and again, it is a true story, hard to believe. The comments were magnificent.
Oh,
so one of them was maybe they should also put in a waiting period and background checks, and not allow toys with long barrels, and not let felons buy them.
I also liked somebody wrote, "I'm afraid to ask, photo ID of what?"
Talking to you, Luke Sayers. And another one was Angela Paxton wants to track Ken's purchases.
And somebody else wrote, he has to have an ID to purchase his wife.
Now, Australian news, a great Aussie story of the week. This is one for the battlers. And it's a good one for those of us with kids in private schools suffering through the bleeding from the eyeball and hip pocket that involves.
At least.
A school in Sydney's eastern suburbs that shall remain nameless.
Scots College, yeah.
It's just opened or is about to open a new building, which has cost $60 million to build.
That's not the worst of it. Tell them what the building is.
Paid for by parents. It looks like a baronial castle.
It's like a castle.
It's literally modelled on a Scottish baronial
Paid for
castle.
by the parents, you were saying, yes.
I've seen it. It looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's over time, over budget, $60 million, paid for by parents and alumni.
Mm-hmm.
And
parents are paying how much in school fees a year?
Parents are paying up to $51,000 a year in school fees to put their boys through the school.
And I assume that got them in free to the castle.
And that's the kicker. $60 million building, $51,000 a year in fees. And they get a little line item on their statement saying $50 to attend the opening of the castle.
Which they've already paid for.
Correct. And that's like the old days. You know, you worked in a law firm. I worked in a big consulting firm. You know, when they'd send their clients a bill, and the bill would be like $2.4 million plus $23.50 for photocopying.
couldn't waive the photocopying.
3 taxis and a cappuccino.
Oh, fucking hell.
Anyway, all right, we're going to finish with some fun and entertainment news.
Yes.
And the first one's a great story, and we have to give her credit because she clearly gets the joke.
Yes.
And that's Jessica Simpson, the bombshell blonde singer.
Yes.
Basically looks like a singing Pamela Anderson.
She does.
She was very big late 90s, early 2000s. She was Daisy Duke in the Dukes of Hazzard remake.
That's right.
She appeared on the Newlyweds, a show with her then husband called Nick
Lachey.
Shay, is that
Nick Lachey? I think Nick Lachey.
Lachey. I always thought it was Lockie, but then
don't know how I know that. I definitely never watched the show. How dare you?
Anyway, she's a singer / model / actress, but she's really a singer.
Yeah.
And she revealed during the week.
This is the secret to her success.
Is a concoction whose active ingredient, and again, we're not making this up.
No.
Whose active ingredient is snake sperm.
Yeah.
And she said, quote unquote, "It really clears my throat."
I don't want to be rude. I do feel like she might need a little more snake sperm because the voice is really not great.
My question is, how and where is this concoction administered?
How do you do it? I assume there's many different ways to get snake sperm. You could put the whole thing in your mouth. Or do you just hold the snake and grab it and sort of move it up and down till is that? I don't know. I'm just wondering.
Are you saying orally or
this is scientific questions?
Or
how do you have it administered? Where else could it go? In the Arctic Circle, like Eric the Viking.
Eric the Viking.
So many questions.
How big is the snake?
Look, I'm not a biologist, an animal expert in reptiles, but I don't think size is. It's really about. It's about how the snake moves. Isn't it the movement of the snake that really?
The power of the venom.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. So do you think it's a true story, Honko?
Who's going to tell her it's a prank of about 25 years standing?
Yeah, I reckon the joke's on us. I think she's been making big money off desperados like us for years.
Horny desperados, yeah.
So full credit, Jessica Simpson. Our other big story takes us back briefly to the Trump White House, Honky.
Yeah.
And we've said previously that Trump combines fucking up the world with the most trivial things imaginable.
And he outdid himself this week,
and we said that in the context of plastic straws.
Yes, and also his objection to a portrait of himself in Colorado State House he didn't like.
Correct.
But he's outdone himself.
That's right. And the executive order of the week is that high-flow shower heads are back. This is a true story.
Where did they go?
So there's been a back and forth. Trump loosened literally regulations on the flow rate of shower heads in his first term.
Yes. So you could have a harder water pressure.
Exactly. More water coming through the shower.
Yeah.
Biden then restricted the flow of water in shower heads by legislation in his term of office.
Is this
on environmental grounds?
Was there a real chance of ordinary Americans enjoying themselves in the shower? What was the...
Exactly.
His advisor was like, I just want to say, we all have to sacrifice. I myself haven't showered since Hillary lost, and I just...
In West, Karen supported the shower ban.
But anyway...
But most red-blooded Americans didn't.
No.
And so Trump has gleefully reversed the decision.
Yes.
And he took time out of his busy week to hold a press conference about it. and we'd like to claim some credit again.
Yeah.
Because this is Honky, a big win for Tom Selleck fans.
We talked about Tom Selleck a couple of weeks ago on the show, and we asserted that there was a time when the dads had a den in which, in the 80s, they all watched sport in, and the only time the mum was in the household was allowed into the den on her own with a shower head was to watch Tom Selleck, the hunk, on the hit series Magnum P.I.
And now they're going to make shower heads and showers great again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And will you still be able to take is it going to be 80s? Will you be able to take the shower head all the way to the den again with a lock on the door for the Magnum reruns?
Yeah, you can watch Blue Bloods. His
Blue
more recent
Bloods
series, if you're into his later oeuvre, and Mrs. Honk. I know she enjoys that series immensely.
This is good because now Tom Selleck. So now Trump's brought back the hard-working showerhead, but now you can sort of get Tom Selleck. Imagine if Tom Selleck could put his name to it,
right?
Like George Foreman with the grill.
The Tom Selleck
showerhead,
high-flow showerhead.
Yeah,
satisfaction guaranteed.
Satisfaction guaranteed. Just like 1987 all over again.
Excellent. Well, it's hard to think of the show getting sillier than it is right now, so we'll call it there.
Yes.
For another week. We want to say thanks for your support.
Thank you very much.
Please like, subscribe, and especially share the show with all your WhatsApp groups and on social media, etc.
Please follow it wherever you like to listen to it.
There's a link tree in our show notes with all the places you can find it.
Yes, like X,
Instagram, Facebook, you name it.
Yes.
And we're going to close with Trump's presser, actually, on the high flow show ahead.
It is a bit of a masterpiece, isn't it?
And it is real, and it's very moving, Honky.
It's very moving. I mean, I've been trying to work out why I'm so moved. I can't work out if it's because, like, it reminds me of the great, most stirring presidential speeches, like from Lincoln or JFK or other American leaders like Martin Luther King. Or if it's because it's a little bit like the last time you've seen Grandpa at the old folks' home and he's sort of rambling about immigrants or something.
Anyway, high flow shower heads in the White House. What will next week bring?
Who can say?
We'll find out. We'll be back next week because stupid never sleeps.
It never sleeps. Neither do we. We'll be back next week. We're going to leave you with President Trump and the shower heads. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Next up, sir, we have a series of executive orders and a memorandum all relating to deregulation, which has obviously been a major priority of your administration. The first of these is an executive order. The Biden administration launched what you've called a war on showers. They had certain regulations that basically killed the water pressure of showers and other water appliances.
You can say it. Go ahead. What are the appliances?
I mean, it's everything, sir.
Sinks and toilets,
dishwashers, toilets, sinks. But the shower heads are a huge deal.
There's no water. You don't get water. It's ridiculous.
So with this executive order, we're effectively going to be reversing that set of regulations to ensure that Americans have choice in the consumer market. If they want a low-flow shower head, they can buy one. If they want a real deal shower head, they should have the ability to get one. There you go.
You buy a new house, you pay a lot of money, and the developers, you're not allowed to do anything more. They put restrictors on. They used to have a restrictor where you could take it out, but now they weld it in. And you take a shower or wash your hands, whatever you do, including dishwashers where no water comes out. But you wash your hands, and in my case, I like to take a nice shower to take care of my beautiful hair. And I have to stand under the shower for 15 minutes till it gets wet. It comes out drip, drip, drip. It's ridiculous. And what you do is you end up washing your hands 5 times longer. It's the same water. And we're going to open it up so that people can live, and we're going to hopefully have Congress approve it so it's memorialized. We're going to try and get all of these things, including straws, a little thing like straws. We did straws a month ago, where the paper straws were melting. They were dissolving. They weren't working well. And we went back to the plastic straws. We're going to get Congress to memorialize just about everything we've done here, because most of it's common sense. But the water is horrible. When you go into anytime you see a new faucet, you know it's going to be a long wash of the hands. And so we're changing. It's a big deal. I did it in the first administration. Biden came in his first week, and he had no idea what he was doing, but somebody told him to do it. In his first week, he put the restrictions on all the bathroom utilities. Even in areas that have so much water, they don't know what to do with it. You see those areas all the time with the flooding. So we're doing that, and we're going to get all of the things that you've seen. I think we set a record. We're up to almost 200 and 500 amendments Nobody's ever done that money. We're going to get them approved by Congress, so they're memorialized. And we look forward to doing that. Very important. And Congress is going to start working on it as soon as we get the big, beautiful deal done. The big, beautiful deal is important. The biggest tax cuts in the history of our country, that's important.